Well, I appreciate you tuning in today, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Marc Harvill Art. Going to be working today on a commission painting, and this is an Air Force painting, local Air Force base. Commissioned this painting. What we're doing here is painting on a 2 foot by 3 foot canvas, and just getting this background painted in. Used turquoise and some ultramarine blue light, and a little bit of gesso to create the blue background, and then just bringing in these clouds. Used a filbert brush to kind of dry brush on some of the dark gray that you see in the background, which is really just my burnt sienna, my ultramarine blue, and some white to create that gray effect, and then let that dry completely. And now I can come back with some lighter gray tones here to start to bring in some of the individual cloud formations, and then slowly kind of light that up as we go. The light source will be coming off from the right on this painting. As I said, this is a commission painting. It's going to be a unique painting. There's going to be a lot of interesting elements kind of thrown together here. We're going to have fighter jets. We'll have flying in the sky. We'll have the Rocky Mountains in the back, since this base is located in Colorado. And we're going to have a building. It's called the Logistics Readiness Squad, LRS. So we're going to have their building, and then we'll have some other items here, forklifts and some vehicles. They are sort of the maintenance crew that works on and repairs all the vehicles and the fighter planes. So there'll be a lot of interesting elements. We'll have some of their logos as well. So have a very different, unique painting that I've not really done before, but it'll be a nice exercise in just adding different just different things in the painting that I think will be a good exercise to review. So right now I'm starting to add the mountain formations of the Rockies in the background, going very light, pale blue-gray color, and then just adding just a little bit of highlight with some gold color that I've mixed with my cadmium orange and cadmium yellow and my titanium white. Now I'm coming back to bring in more of the foreground mountain ranges, going a little bit darker, a little bit more on the bluish purple side as well, but still want to really create the illusion that these are really tucked back, distant in the background. So we don't want to make the colors too bold, still kind of keeping them very cool and kind of muted there in the background. Get those kind of brushed on really quickly with my angle brush here, and then just kind of going back over it again to kind of disguise some of the ground color that's showing through. And then I've let that dry fully, and I've used my charcoal pencil, and I've kind of outlined where I want to have some of the primary peaks. And now I'm just coming back with my small angular brush, and I'm bringing on, with a kind of a dry brush technique, I'm bringing on my gold color that I created, and just bringing it on very light. There's not a lot of paint on my brush, and I'm just dry brush blending this on really soft, and kind of figuring out where I want all the angles, all the crevices from the rock formations. And then I can go back again and kind of strengthen that gold color a little more. But right now I just want to kind of give the illusion that there's a lot of cracks and crevices. So I get all that kind of figured out, and These are going to be snowy mountains as well, so we're going to have some snow caps that I'll paint on here in a moment. So now I'm coming back. I've I've changed the value of my gold, and I've just increased that value with my titanium white and yellow and orange, and just want to kind of make a little bit more bold in certain areas just to show that there's really some sunlight that's really kind of penetrating certain areas of the mountain range. So I'll just go right over and highlight exactly where I would like to see that. But you want to be careful. You don't want to make straight lines. You kind of want to kind of jump around and kind of dot jagged lines with this, and just be conservative. You don't want to kill any of that background. So really look at your negative space. Let a lot of that underpainting of that purple blue color show through. That's going to really be important, that you don't want to kill any of that. So this is kind of where I think I'm going to be able to see where most of the sunlight's really filtering through the mountain range here. Once I get that kind of squared away, then I can start adding my snow, which I've done. So on the cool side of the mountain, I've just mixed titanium zinc white with ultramarine blue. And then on the sunny side of the mountain, I've primarily used titanium zinc white, but with a little yellow mixed in as well. And that will help to create sort of the light versus shadow effect. And the contrast is really important here. So as I'm looking at this, I'm really thinking about the contrast. So this painting is completely coming from just memory and creativity and trying to figure things out. I'm really thinking about my colors, using my color wheel, thinking of complement colors, trying to have my blues and oranges kind of showing through, and I'll keep thinking of the complement colors as I go. Now I've drawn in by hand the American flag. I want it to be waving. And this will sort of be really just an underpainting, honestly. It's going to be the background, but I'm going to still come back through here and try to add some highlights and some shadow to the flag to really give it the illusion that it's flapping. And so just kind of working this out real quickly. And I've painted in the red I've used. Really, I just mixed green and red together to kind of create a dull red color. And I can come back now once that's dry, and I can dry brush on some highlights. And so I've just come back with cadmium red light and cadmium orange and a little bit of titanium zinc white to create that highlight effect, and then go back onto the ripples and try to add that. And that will definitely help to give the illusion that there's kind of peaks and valleys in the flag as it waves. So I'll come through again. I've let that background color completely dry, and I'm just dry brush blending with my filbert brush the highlights. And there's not a lot of paint on the brush. That's important. And you don't want the brush to be very wet either. You want it to be fairly dry. So you might want to have a paper towel and dry it off pretty thoroughly before you try to dry brush on this color. So I'm just kind of figuring out where I think I'm going to see some of the waves of this flag, and where I think I'm going to have my highlighted colors. Now a lot of this flag is going to get covered up with some of the focal points of the painting when I bring in some of the seals and crests. And we're going to have a truck that's getting maintenanced on the left and a forklift being driven on the right. Those are some things that that this department uses in their everyday service. So I'm coming back now, and I've blended in some burnt sienna and some titanium zinc white and created this sort of dull brownish color that I'm using as my shadow. So just dry brushing that here into the brown, into the white regions of the stripes, and following kind of the same angles as I did with the red ribbon, and getting that placed real quickly. And again, that's just going to lend to bringing in the illusion, but keep in mind to have a really dry bristles, and very little paint on the brush. And I find that using filbert brushes for this dry brush blending technique is very handy. And I tend to dry brush quite a bit when it comes to painting with oils. So I find that filberts, oh, I said oils. I'm sorry, I meant as I paint with acrylic. I tend to dry brush quite a bit, since the acrylic dries so quickly. I just find it easier to use the filbert brush and just kind of dry brush on these colors. So I'm coming back now with some pure white and just trying to get my stripes very, very straight, and bring in some additional color to highlight into the white stripe region of the flag. I want to get all this kind of taken care of before I can proceed further. And again, I know a lot of it's going to be covered up, and I don't really know exactly where it's going to get covered. So it's just a good rule of thumb to completely paint in everything first. That way, if it happens to peek through later on, then I'm not trying to bring it back in or work around objects. Just much easier that way. So now I've drawn in with my little charcoal pencil my stars, and so on the shadowed side of the blue region of the flag, again, I'm using that same kind of gray mixture that I created with burnt sienna and white, and just coloring in these stripes or these stars in that darker kind of muted color. Now, when I go into the highlighted region of that area, then I'm just using a pure white, a pure titanium zinc white. And that'll help me to give that illusion again that some of this is waving, and it's getting hit by light and there's shadow. And that'll just help lend to that illusion. So kind of skipping ahead here, and I apologize, I'm going to end up cutting out an enormous amount of video footage. It's just absolutely impossible to show every single step of this painting. I did a lot off camera as well, so it's just not possible with time to get everything recorded as I'd like. So I try to do my best to just kind of video the most important aspects of the painting as I go, but unfortunately I just can't show everything as I'd like. So I'm going to be skipping ahead quite a bit as I move through this, but continuing to paint in these stars, and there's a lot of tedious activity that I'll have to go through as I paint this painting. There's an enormous amount of detail, and which I love detail, but does take an awful lot of time. So um, just have to bear with me on that. So now I'm coming back, and I'm just using a pure black paint here. Um, this is going to be me creating my line of evergreen trees here. And this will help to serve to push that mountain range back even further. But just using my large brush and really quickly laying in the underpainting for these pine trees. And so kind of laying out where I want to have those. Then I'll come back and I will be using a script liner brush to complete these trees. And this is, when I say tedious, this part here is definitely tedious. I spent an enormous amount of time trying to work on my line of trees, and it's mostly all done with my little script liner brush. And so I'm coming back now, and now that I've blocked in sort of the main body of trees, I can now come back with my liner brush and I can bring in all the individual limbs and branches and kind of cluster of pine needles is what I'm working on here now. And this is definitely long and time consuming, but definitely worth it in the end to capture the effect that I was wanting. So I will continue bringing all this in, and you won't see me doing all of this. This is very repetitive. I just want to show just a small segment of how I'm kind of building this out. So we'll get all this kind of laid in, and I'll do it across the entire canvas and kind of skip ahead here to bring all this in. But again, it's definitely well worth the time and energy to do this. And I want to get a really good silhouette going, and then we can come back with our highlights. But I'll essentially use my script liner brush for all of this. So it's very versatile, good brush to use and to kind of get those finer details in. And then want to make sure go between the trees, the primary foreground trees, and bring in smaller little trees, just to kind of give that illusion that you've got a dense and deep forest going on here. Okay, so now I've got all the trees outlined the way I want them to, and now we can really get them to come alive here. And I've mixed a sap green with some cadmium yellow and in a little bit of yellow green to create this highlighted color that I can come through here now and really start to lay in some of the highlight. So I'm still following the brush strokes on all the branches and limbs and going right above them and adding in these highlights to really bring them kind of out. But you want to make sure that as you work your way down that tree trunk that you're leaving a lot of that dark underpainting showing through. So the underpainting here is really, really important to pull this off, and you don't want to kill all that. So continue to watch your negative space, and you can use this liner brush and this highlight to kind of form the basic shape of the trees. And now I'm coming back through here and I've changed the value of that green and lightened it up a little bit more with some white and yellow. And then going off onto the right side of each individual tree, showing a little more highlight since our light source is coming off from the right. And I just want to give the illusion that we've got bursts of sunlight that's kind of hitting the top portions of those trees. And now that I've got that kind of worked in, I've drawn in the LRS building and did that with my charcoal pencil, kind of laid out where I wanted that to be. And now I'm coming back with some purple and some burnt sienna and some white to create that kind of dark, that dark brownish color that I've got going here now. And I kind of want some of the flag to sort of show through a little bit. So I don't have a lot of paint on the brush, but just enough that I can get a good covering here and kind of give the impression that this is going to be earth and soil that I'm working around. I apologize, I've got the canvas off the camera here for a moment, but now I'm painting in real quickly a satellite. We've got, you've probably seen these too, but at the military base, there's an awful lot of these almost large golf ball looking things that are satellites. And it was requested that I add one of these into the painting as well. So this is the first of one of those strange and unique things that I'm adding into the painting right now. But so again, I apologize that I'm kind of off the camera here. I've got to kind of get the right angles and flip this thing around so I can get that in here. But I'm trying to do all this quickly before the paint dries. I want to have that blending time to kind of bring that in. All right, so we're now continuing on with painting in the LRS building where they do their labor and where they kind of they house the department. And so getting this roof kind of painted in, and I'm using my classic standard favorite gray color, which is burnt sienna and ultramarine blue and white, to get that nice gray smoky color in here. We'll get that painted in real quickly here on the roof, and then we can block in the rest of the building as well. And so I'm using burnt sienna and dioxazine purple and some white to create this nice kind of muted purple color. I love purple. I think it's an excellent color. It's a natural shadow color, and so I tend to use it quite a bit when I'm forming dark shadows and just to get this whole thing kind of blocked in real quick. I like to have a darker, sort of a darker base color when I do buildings and in the vehicles or anything I'm kind of working on. I like to start with it all kind of dark, and then I can dry brush on the highlights. And I like the effect that it gives, and it kind of helps to kind of create some realism, I think, a little bit when I do it this way. So continue to block in and kind of figure out where everything is sort of located here, and then we can let that dry for a moment as I come back here to our little satellite, and the satellite is now dried, so I can come back through here and I can sort of scumble on this kind of highlight color, a little more white, and get it a little bit lighter. And this is also serving as sort of maybe a second coat of paint as I'm painting over things in the background. They tend to kind of try to show through. So in several instances, I have to go back through and add additional layers of paint so I can cover up any of the underpainting from showing through there. So I went to the military base one day and I was able to take several photos, and I took photos of the satellites. I took photos of the building, of the fighter jets that we're going to have flying in the sky. Took photos of other components, the vehicle, um, and so you'll see that all come through later on. But I'm working off of several reference photos, and luckily I was able to go to the military base that day and take a lot of photos, which I think served very well uh, for kind of pulling all this together. Now, a lot of the time as I go through, I really thought a lot about how I was going to put this painting together, and and I even make adjustments and tweaks along the way. I wasn't 100% certain how I wanted everything to look, but the composition was really important. I had to keep thinking about that composition. How was I going to lead the eye of the viewer to the center of the painting and to certain elements and attributes of the painting? So it was a lot of planning in preparation for this painting. All right, so coming back through now, and I've let that building underpainting dry, and I can come back through here, and I'm adding now several things I'm seeing in from the reference photo. Um, we've got water drain spouts that I'm putting in, and so just some other things that I'm kind of seeing from that reference photo that I'm trying to get in here right now. And I've already worked the roof, and of course I had to jump ahead in time and couldn't show that, but the roof was sort of a greenish gray color, so that's kind of what I used to get that roof painted in real quickly. So now I'll be jumping back and forth. I'll be going back to that pile of paint that I mixed, that dioxazine purple and burnt sienna color. I think I brought in a little bit of umber as well to create that color, and then I can just sort of start to add those highlights as I see them. Now my highlight color again is that gold that I created with the cadmium yellow and cadmium orange and titanium zinc white. We want to show that the sun's coming in from the right. It's hitting the right side of the building, and really think about the angle of the building and how the light will hit and where the shadows are going to lie. So I try to go as detailed as I can. I really want to stay true to the photograph reference materials that I took of the building. And they had this large sort of shipping receiving area with these large bay doors. Um, they have these bay doors numbered, so I wanted to get the numbering in on them. I think it's unique and sets the building apart. And then we can just kind of bring in everything else that I'm kind of seeing from this painting or from the reference material into the painting. I'm using my little felt tip pen when I want to create really nice lines um, that are nice and straight. I can often go to my felt tip pen and get that kind of drawn in, and that's kind of what you're seeing me do here on some of these smaller, more fine detailed areas. I tend to not use my liner brush quite as much if I want to have really good solid straight lines. So it's a little trick that I tested out long ago and found that it was quite handy. I had a lot of fun with this painting. I wasn't sure what I would expect. As I said, a lot of thought went into the painting, and I wasn't totally sure how I wanted everything to look, and kind of was discovering that as I went along and to see if it would work. Um, but had a lot of fun putting it all together. All right, so we're going to start working on the jets now, and so I've kind of drawn them in by hand, and I'm blocking them in with my standard gray mixture that I've put together, and get those blocked in that underpainting real quick, and want to try to just keep true to those angles on the fighter jets. These are F-16 jets, and these are the ones that they primarily use in the Air Force now, and what the LRS typically work on. So I was able to take a lot of photos of these fighter jets, and they had specific things that they wanted on the tail wing, specific numbers and so forth. So I was able to get that all represented onto these jets. I've let that underpainting dry now, and I'm coming back with a small filbert brush, and I'm just starting to add in my highlights. And I like to just kind of dry brush them on softly, and then just lighten up the value of that gray a little bit more. And then I can come back with my smaller zero brush, or even my script liner brush, with the fine head on it, and kind of bring in some of these other details. And there was a lot of detail into this, and I had to use very small brushes to make this work. So um, again, using my reference photos, and just trying to think about how the light would be hitting the fighter jets, and where everything kind of goes on this. So I'll keep working through this, and getting this all figured out. I don't really know why the camera is shaking so much. Must be something with my video software, but so I apologize for all the shaking around that's happening on this, as I'm trying to paint this on here. We'll get this all kind of wrapped up here, and then I can take my eraser, and erase the chalk outline here, and that'll kind of help pull it all together. So now I'm kind of drawing in some of the symbols and some of the decals that they wanted on the back of these tail wings. And I can move on to our other little jets in the sky here. And this one here in the far background doesn't have an enormous amount of detail. I just want to sort of give the illusion of what's happening here with just a couple simple brush strokes, and that can kind of create some of the highlights and help to dimensionalize the jet. But don't need to spend a whole lot of time on it. Just kind of give the illusion of what it is that's flying back there, and we can kind of move on from there. All right, so working on the last jet now, and using that little filbert brush, I can bring in again those highlights. I've allowed that under painting to dry now, and I can start to bring in these little details now. I didn't want to make the jets too large. I certainly didn't want to kill too much of the mountain range or the clouds in the sky. I really liked those and didn't want to have to cover them up too much. So just wanted to make the jets large enough that I could add the details that the folks wanted, but also not cover too much of some of that mountain range. So I'll bring in these details with my liner brush and get that all kind of blocked in here, and we can move on from there. Just kind of want to give the illusion there's a little man flying in the plane. All right, so I'm painting in a cat now. I'm not sure if it was a leopard or exactly what it was, a panther or something, but they have these usually on their planes, so had to very carefully try to paint this in with my liner brush, just using black, and get that cat face kind of painted in here. All right, so from this point on, we can kind of start working on some of the seals of the logistics readiness squad. So I was able to get them to send me some of these department seals, and then I'm able to kind of get them painted in here. So I'll end up kind of skipping ahead here pretty quickly. It's really just a matter of blocking in everything, and then kind of filling it all in. So we had an eagle here, and then we had the Colorado seal in the background with the mountains and the big sea, and then there's just an airship that's kind of flying into the sky. So again, kind of representative of being out here in Colorado, and kind of help to kind of distinguish this particular unit or department from the others on the military base. And again, I had to go over this a few times. I'm using acrylic, and since I'm painting over the flag, and I wasn't sure exactly what parts of the flag would be visual and which would not, I just needed to paint over that. So it requires me to go through a couple layers of paint to to apply it, and then let it dry, and then come back and kind of apply more and try to cover up any underpainting from showing through. I've made that mistake in the past. It's a very rookie mistake, and always frustrates me when that happens. So it's good just to take the additional time to go back through if you need to and paint over a few layers of paint if necessary to really get it blocked in appropriately. So it's the 140th Logistics Readiness Squad, is the name of the unit. And so just getting that kind of hand drawn in here real quickly with my small number 0 round brush. Again, it's pretty tedious. having to do that, but it's just part of who they are and what they're requesting. So get that all kind of worked in here, and then we can move on from here. So we're going to move on now to the large truck here that's getting maintenanced. I've got a little man, a soldier that's got his head peeking under the hood, and the hood's open. So I've just gone ahead and taken some time to hand draw in basic outline of where the truck is located, and using my angular brush. I find these angle brushes are just great for using to block in these large areas and achieve all the different angles that I'm seeing. But using just a nice dark gray color, I've mixed my sap green and my ultramarine blue and a little bit of dioxazine purple, and then some titanium zinc white to opaque it. But those are the colors I've used to create this kind of army greenish color that I'm seeing from the reference photo. I want to make it all nice and dark. And again, just like the building, I'll block it all in dark, and then I'll add my highlights right over that with a dry brush technique once it gets dry. And I'll have to go through and add several layers of underpainting on this as well to cover up the stars and stripes the best I can. Right now it's just a matter of blocking it in. Where do I see all the shadows and then the highlight regions. I'm trying to keep some of my charcoal lines visible through my paint so that I can continue to kind of see where those lines are and as my guide to dimensionalizing this truck. So a lot of a big task here. I spent a lot of time working on this truck, but definitely needed it to be very careful, and you really need to kind of slow down here. You don't want to just slap it on real quickly. You want to really follow those angles. Will require you to really get into the painting quite a bit, get your nose up to the canvas. And I'm just going back through here again and kind of going over some of the underpainting again. And we'll save our little man for the very end here. I'll just kind of paint around him right now. But this is really kind of how I like to work these specific elements into a painting. When it comes to anything from buildings to machinery, I just like to get it all blocked in with the nice dark underpainting, and I can make sure I get all the angles just the way I want them, and then I can slowly start to build in the highlights using my dry brushing technique. I'll let it completely dry so that it's not tacky, and then I can go back with the dry brush. And that's kind of where I'm jumping forward here now is I'm dry brushing the lighter values of greens and blues on top of the darker. It helps to kind of create kind of that aged effect, I think. But it's now completely dry, and I don't have a lot of paint on the brush. I'm using again my little filbert brush, which I find is really handy for this technique. And I can start to distinguish where the sun is really hitting the vehicle here. It's all coming from the right, so I can kind of follow those guides and those angles that I've got and get that all kind of worked in here real quick. And then you just slowly kind of build this in. And I'll come back through here and I'll kind of tweak it and adjust it as I go. Um, Continue to add little elements, a little bit more color if I feel like it's needed, and again, just kind of adjust as I need to. But trying to capture that color I'm kind of seeing from the reference photo the best I can here. That army green color. And there's a lot of detail in this truck that I try to capture. I had to really use small brushes during this process here, getting really into the finer details of the vehicle. And it certainly took a lot of time to do all of this. This commission was it was an interesting challenge, and it was a lot of fun. It was getting me moved away from a lot of the common things that I seem to do quite a bit, but it was fun bringing in some of these things that I had not really painted before, but using some of my knowledge and some of the old tricks and things that I've used in the past. I think I was fairly pleased with the outcome here. So starting to kind of bring in more of the rivets and some of the seams into the vehicle and the doors. Yeah, it just took some time, but I had a lot of fun in the process. And it was fun to watch it kind of come alive, going from nothing to something. I always enjoy that when it comes to painting. Excuse me. So we're gonna get through this here pretty quickly. Start working on our little mechanic here, and he'll be wearing camouflage, and so that'll be coming here pretty quickly. But just kind of finishing out some of the finer details now, kind of getting to closer to the end of putting this truck together, and I'll add some of the decals. I had some of the grilling on the front of the hood of the vehicle, and just finish out some of the lighting and things that I'm kind of seeing from the reference photo. So I had to jump kind of forward here in the interest of time and getting closer to the end of this video, but went ahead and had blocked in our little man now, and had added the logos onto the vehicle. So I just needed to kind of fast forward a little bit here, but just kind of completing our little man out here right now, and he's wearing his fatigues and just working on the vehicle. This was an important element that was requested from the LRS. Again, they're a maintenance unit, so they really wanted to show them working on trucks and their vehicles. Just do a little bit of tweaking along the way here. We'll add some more highlights into the shirt and into the pants and some more shadow. And his little arm that's sticking out there, we'll add some highlight there as well. I mixed some flesh tone and then just change the value of that flesh tone to add some highlights. And I'll just dry brush that on to our little guy here. And we'll be be pretty close to being complete on this truck. So skipping ahead here now, adding again another SEAL, Air National Guard, which is part of the Air Force as well. It's kind of their reserve unit. Requested that I to bring this in as well. So I've kind of fast forwarded in the interest of time and just kind of show me adding some of the final elements and final details that go into this particular seal here. And very fine detail, very small lines. So I had to pretty much use my liner brush for all of this as well. Try to work in those small details, those small brush strokes. And then we move forward again, and I'm working on this forklift. So again, another very interesting request was painting a forklift, and I can't say I've ever painted a forklift before, but I just treated it the exact same way as me painting the vehicle. Just like to block in the entire underpainting. I'm using a really dark gray. Excuse me. I'm pretty much I use black and some white and some blue, and created this really smoky dark gray color. And then I can come back and change my value in that mixture, add a little white to lighten it up here. And I can start to dry brush now. I've let everything dry on that underpainting. And now I can use my filbert brush and kind of draw in some of those highlights here with dry brushing. So we can bring in some of the finer details with my liner brush now, and I can kind of pick out everything that I'm sort of seeing from my reference photo. Once I usually block in my silhouette for the underpainting on these types of vehicles, I like to come back and use my charcoal brush, or I'm sorry, my charcoal pencil, and kind of draw in where I'm seeing some of the details and some of the lines, and that'll help me to kind of further guide me along where I'm kind of seeing everything. So a very interesting and unique thing to add here, and it was an interesting challenge to do this. Very, very different from the things I typically do, but nevertheless, I learned from everything that I try, and this was certainly a first for me. And I learned an awful lot about how to work these things into a painting and what I wanted to do with it. So all in all, it was a really fun and interesting thing to do, and I wasn't sure when I got this particular commission what to expect, and I was not overly looking forward to it. But as I got into it, um, it definitely challenged me, and I think it was a lot of fun. And along the way, it was pretty enjoyable to do it. I didn't have a lot of struggles like I do sometimes in some paintings. It seemed to fall together pretty well, and that was a kind of a happy accident to see happen. So, all right, so now we're kind of fast forwarding here, and I've blocked in my little driver now, and we don't need an enormous amount of detail on him, but just kind of enough that we can tell that this is somebody driving this little forklift, and um, and I guess they use these quite a bit in their work. So they certainly wanted to have that in their painting, and yeah, it was definitely interesting to do that. So just underpainting our guy here now, and I mixed together a burnt sienna and titanium zinc white to get that lighter brownish underpainting in his boots and his clothing, and we can let that kind of dry, and then I can come back and dry brush on the highlights. So I had an enormous amount of detail on here as well, but it was a lot of fun trying to add all the logos, all the lettering into the painting. Um, I think really kind of added to some of the realism of that. Kind of paint in his camouflage, and then add in some more detail into his boots, and just kind of refine things at this point in time. Add a little bit of highlight here and there, and kind of square up certain angles that I'm seeing from the photo, and kind of refine everything kind of moving forward here. And it's amazing how much time this ends up taking, even for something as kind of as small integrated into the painting as painting this forklift. Just had a lot of detail. So just had to be kind of patient with the process and let it kind of work its way out and unfold. And with that, we can kind of call this painting complete, and I can paint on my signature here. And hopefully that was helpful to see how I put that together. Again, it was very unique, a unique commission, one that I think challenged me and allowed me to get real creative and trying to figure out how all that goes. So I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you can please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Marc Harvill Art, and I'll be looking forward to starting a new painting here very soon. Thanks for tuning in.